So let's talk a little bit about how we can start designing our page using CSS. First thing to notice is I have the Black Goose restaurant open with 3 different browsers here. And just to show you, they're pretty similar, but there are some slight differences. There's slight differences in the size of the font, and the kind of like the spacing. Here in Internet Explorer, my letters are very small and they're spaced close together, and over here in Firefox they're a little bit wider. So one of the reasons for this, I mean, different browsers are going to present things differently, and that's why it's great to test in all browsers. But one of the reasons is because we're just using the default heading 1 text, the default link text, the default heading 3 text, and the default heading, paragraph text. We haven't actually styled any of those HTML tags and specified to the browser which fonts or font sizes or colors that we want to use. We've marked them up with HTML, but now it's up to the browser to decide how to display it, because it's just going to pick the default settings that it has since we didn't specify anything. So I'm going to close these out, and let's go over to Dreamweaver and talk about how we can start setting this up. Okay, so over here in Dreamweaver, and I'm going to start on my Bistro home page. I'm going to go down to the Properties Inspector, and where it says Page Properties, I'm going to click on that button. And this gives me a pop-up window. And over here I see some categories. And I'm just going to cancel this out to show another way you can get to this. If I go up to Modify, I can also get to Page Properties. So if for some reason you can't find your Properties Inspector, go up to Modify and choose Page Properties. Either way, you're going to get to the same window. So this window is kind of like a fast way to get a little bit of CSS on your page. It has some good things, that it can be really quick to start styling your page, but then it has a lot of limitations. So we're just going to use this for about a week as an intro, and then I'm going to show you all the other features in Dreamweaver, all the other panels to be able to access more CSS, and also how to just do this directly in your code. And we'll probably do a little bit of that in this video as well. So first of all, what's CSS? I think we've talked about this in another video, but CSS is what we're going to use to design the page. So when the web was first developed, there was just HTML, and the HTML was what was being used to design the page. So to be able to create hierarchy, to be able to separate things out, to be able to give it a little bit of style was all done with HTML. The idea with CSS is separate the design from the content. So that's why our content is there in the body, and our design is going to be within the head tags. Later on, perhaps in this class or maybe in another class, we'll talk about actually even taking that design, that CSS, and putting it into a whole separate file, and then just linking this HTML page to that CSS file. And that's called an external style sheet. What we're starting off doing are embedded style sheets. So we're going to see our styles on the page. So for each page, the downside is for each page we have to set the color for the background, we have to set our text, we have to set all of the design features for each page. But there's a reason I want you to do it like this instead of the external. It's going to be easier for troubleshooting as you're beginning, and it's also going to just simply give you that practice for working with CSS. So you have to do it for every single page, you have to do it again. Okay, so what can we style here? Well, I'm in this category, and notice there are 2 categories for appearance, one's CSS and one's HTML. Don't use the HTML. We're not going to design our page with HTML, only with CSS. So that's what I have here. The first thing I can decide is my page font. And if I click on that, I notice this kind of limited list of text, and they're all in groups. So the idea of it being a limited list, if we're just using this font, and a whole other video I'm going to talk about more font you can use, is I need to make sure whatever I put onto my web page is going to be accessible on the computer of someone else looking through their web page. So in other words, if I pick a font that I have on my computer, but you don't have on your computer, you're not going to be able to view that font, and my whole design might get messed up. So I want to pick font families that are most likely going to be on everyone's computers. But the reason that they're listed here in a group is because if you don't have the first one, then the browser is going to look for the next font in the list. And if you don't have that one, it's going to look for the next one, and next one, and next one. And you can also make your own list as well. So when we're starting out with, we're going to use just these kind of limited types of fonts. And I'm just going to start off with something really kind of traditional. I'll take this one here, the top one. So I'm going to choose this font, and this is going to be the first font, but if the browser, the client's browser doesn't have it, it's going to choose the next one. Then I can choose the style. I could just make it normal, or any of these other ones, but this is going to be targeting all my paragraph text, so not my headings, because there's a separate category for headings and links. So I'm just going to choose normal, and then I can choose size. And oh, sorry, this isn't the size, this is the weight. I'm just going to leave that for now, and here we're going to choose size. So I'm going to talk in much more depth about font size, but for right now we're going to choose 12 pixels. My text color, and then I can choose a background color. So I'm going to choose a kind of light color here. I just clicked on that little triangle, and I'll pick, let's see, Black Goose. So that could be kind of like on the grayish side. Click into there, and then click outside, and it takes that color. But now I want to make sure that my text has good contrast, so black. And if I want to see as I'm designing what this looks like, I'm going to move my page properties and hit apply, and now I can see those changes. And actually I think 12 might be a little bit too small for my font, so let's see if I make it 14 and hit apply, and now it gets a little bit larger. If I had a background image, this is where I could insert it, and I could decide whether or not to repeat it. I'm not going to do that right now. Margins. So I always say you're not going to hand in a paper with the text going from edge to edge and top to bottom, so we wouldn't really design that, make a web page that way as well. I don't have a lot of content on my page, so that's a good reason to put in a top margin. So if I have just a small amount, I can have a little space at the top, and that helps bring that down. So I'm going to put in 50 pixels, and let's hit apply, and notice how everything on my page comes down. I've now just added a margin onto my whole page, so no matter what I put on my page, whether it's an image or text, it'll never go all the way to the edge. There's always a 50 pixel margin here. So one of the challenges, and you'll learn it a little bit more when we get to images, is for you to start understanding pixel dimensions. Because if I said, could you draw out 2 inches by 2 inches, you could probably do something relatively close to it. If I ask you to draw me 50 pixels by 150 pixels, it might take you, I don't know, you may or may not be able to do it. Well, so that's going to be one of the challenges, to understand pixel dimension. Many times, sort of depending on the layout, you want to have a right or left margin as well. And in this case, I think a margin on the left would be a good idea as well. So I'm going to put in 50 pixels and hit apply. And so now I have a nice little amount of space here. That's everything I want to target in my page properties. I'm now going to go to the links category. So notice my links changed font, but they didn't change the way they looked. So I have a choice. Do I want my link font to be the same as the rest of my font, or do I want it to be different? And I can also change its size and its colors. So I want to change the colors and also the style. I don't like my links to be underlined. I'm going to choose never underline. But you could also choose show underline only on rollover, or hide underline only on rollover. So let's do that just for the effect. So when the person puts the mouse over it, they're going to be able to get the underline. My link color, let's see, what if I chose, I want something with a lot of contrast. I'm going to choose white. And I'm going to choose bold. Let's see how this would look. It's okay. I'm choosing bold because if I'm going to choose white on a light gray background, I want it to be able to have contrast and stand out. But I'm allowing it to be the same font as I had. Or I could choose a different font, and I'll just choose a different font just to sort of show that we could have different fonts. And as for the size, I will keep it at 14 pixels. Apply that as well. But now, here are some things that are built into the page properties that I do really like. So I want this link to feel like it's alive. When the person puts the mouse over it, I want it to change in some way. So I'm just going to pick a color. And the way this slider works is I'm going to choose a slider here, and then I'm going to choose a color from inside this window here. So I want it to have a different color when they roll over it. The visited link, you may or may not want that to have a different color. I am going to choose for it to have a different color, so that way they know when they've been somewhere that it's that they've already been there. I'll choose a dark gray. And the active link, I'm just going to, that's the moment they press down, and I'll actually just copy my rollover so it's the same color. So you have to set all of these, especially make sure you set the visited. That's the one I see people forget. And then they look at their web page once and it looks great, and the next time everything is purple and underlined. So to avoid that, set this. So the link color is the color the way the text looks when you first open the page. The rollover is the way it looks when they put the mouse over it. Visited is after you've seen that link, and active is the moment you've clicked on it. And then you have a style option. We have headings on our page, so we can go in and style those as well. Again, I can choose, do I want this to have the same text as everything else on my page, or do I want it to be different? And I actually kind of liked that other one I picked. So now my heading 1 and my heading 3 took on that same font. And then under headings, I can choose the starting size that I want, or the size that I want, and the color. That's all I can choose. I can't have a different font using the page properties for the different headings. So the rule is my heading 1, I can start my heading 1 at 16, but then heading 2 has to be smaller and heading 3 has to be smaller. So each heading needs to be smaller. So I'm going to choose 36. Let's hit apply, and that's going to be my heading 1. And heading 2, even though I don't have it, I'm going to set it. And heading 3, I'm going to make 18. Let's hit apply, and we can see the effects there. And I'm not going to set the rest for right now because we're just going to see what Dreamweaver is going to do. And we're going to leave title and tracing, and that's all we're going to do for now, and click OK. And let's just double check this. Let's preview it in a browser. Save changes, yes. And now this is the way it looks in the browser, which I think with the margins in particular does look a lot nicer. We have a nice amount of hierarchy. When I put my mouse over, my links change and I get an underline. Let's just go visit catering and then come back and just to make sure that everything is working. Okay, fabulous. So let's look at what Dreamweaver did here once I use those page properties. We're now going to see some new colors in the over here in our code view. And actually, I'm just going to switch to code so we can have the full panel for it. So I now have, right after my title, within my head tags though, I have this new tag called the style. And it says style space type equals text slash CSS. And if I scroll all the way down, I have my closing style tag, and that's right before my closing head tag. And here's the syntax for creating CSS. It's not too complicated. I have the HTML that I'm going to target. So the first stuff we're going to do in CSS is targeting HTML. Everything that we know so far that's HTML, we know our headings, so H1, H2, H3. We know a link, we know paragraph, and I guess that's about what we know so far with HTML. So if I know something that's HTML, I can style it with CSS. So what did the page properties do? It styled body. Well, what's body? Body, as we saw, all of our content is within body. So body represents the background. Body represents everything. And this is where you can see my syntax here is body, so the HTML I'm targeting, opening curly bracket. Then what is the attribute I'm applying and how am I applying it? I'm applying a background color and I'm making it this color. At the end is a semicolon. I'm also applying a margin to the top, and this is separated, these two are separated by a colon, a margin at the top of 50 pixels, and then I'm done with that one, so it ends with a semicolon, and you can see it comes down, repeat the next one, and this whole tag, or this whole, style, or CSS rule it's called, ends with a closing curly bracket. So it's my HTML, open curly bracket, what I'm changing, how I'm changing it, closing curly bracket. And see, this is what I don't like about the page properties. It actually added a bunch of extra stuff. So I have an A tag, which is targeting my links. It's all general links, and it's saying this is the font, and this is the color, and it's going to be bold, and this is the size. But then I have specifically these other attributes, a link, that's just my regular link, no text decoration, meaning no underline, and then when it's visited, look like this, when you're hovering over, look like this, and when it's active, hovering over, it's looking like this. Then it does the same thing for my headings. It creates this one rule that targets all of my headings, and it gives it that the font family. Then it goes in specifically and it creates a rule for just my heading 1 and says make it this font size, heading 2, make it this font size, heading 3, make it this font size. So once we start doing this ourselves, we'll see that actually I don't need this one very general heading rule or the one very general link rule. We can assign the specific things that we want to those specific headings or links. But it's okay for now, and this is just how the page properties is going to do it. And really what I wanted you to see is how working with the page properties, it's very simple to start designing your page and setting up a little bit of CSS. The other thing just to notice is the magenta kind of color that Dreamweaver uses to let you know it's CSS versus the HTML that's down here within the body. So I'm not going to go through the other ones with you, but that's what your practice would be. Go through to the next page and see if you can reproduce without copying and pasting the code. But just for the sake of practice, go into your page properties, add your margins, do the colors, and so on and so forth, and see if you can make all 3 of your pages look the same.